Good morning and welcome to EOF Implementers Call number 61 on 30th of October. Tennis looks to be a little lighter. I think there's a conflicting call going on right now because daylight savings time is really messing with everyone right now. America will be back with the rest of the world next week, so hopefully it won't be a problem next week going forward. Um, Today's agenda. Uh, that's last week's call. No, that's an old post of it. There we go. So we have testing update, client update, compiler update, spec update, and others. If you have anything else that's not on the agenda, please post it in the meeting chat. One thing before we get to the end, before we go through it, should we cancel the 13th call? That is the week of DevCon. Cancel it and just pick up after DevCon.
That would be 2 weeks after DevCon, like we are not disturbing
Right,
our schedule. Okay, perfect.
right. Okay. So if there's any objections to that, let me know, but I'll come back to it at the end of the meeting that we'll skip the meeting on the 13th. So let's start with testing update. Mario, you got anything? Just thumbs up?
Not really that much important. Sorry, thumbs up
Yeah.
was for the canceling of the call. But from testing, I've been reviewing PRs for the execution specs. I'm a little bit behind still because I was out 1 week, but I'm getting back to it, and I will probably pick it up today also to review and merge what it's possible to do.
Okay.
Yep.
As far as trying to get Osaka DevNet 0 out the door, the creation of Prague DevNet 4, I think has slowed everyone down. Um, I've got, as I mentioned on the chat, I've got everyone's local stuff running against all the EEST tests in Osaka. The question is, how many are based against what's going into Prague 3 and Prague DevNet 4? Let's see. I guess we'll do that in client updates. But that's the issue there is to make sure that we're going against the correct Prague backing from Osaka.
Yeah, yeah. From what I can tell, EVM one is not in DevNet 4 state yet. But I think if I remember correctly, I filled with Besu, and I'm not but still I'm not sure. I need to double check if that's DevNet 4 up to date, because DevNet 4 is pretty new, so I'm sure there are gonna be some discrepancies.
Yeah, they were three last I checked. I don't know if they've done the 7742 changes. I think those are mostly orthogonal. I mean, it's going to be critical for like a live network, but I think most of them are orthogonal to anything that the EVM can see.
Yes, definitely.
Except, well, if you do get more than six blobs and you transition to seventh blob, there might be a test we might want to see if seven blobs can get there, but yeah, we'll figure that out. So I guess we should move on to client updates. Ben, anything from Nethermind?
No, all good as far as I'm aware, other than the tracing.
Okay. The pricing?
Tracing changes
Tracing,
to
okay.
tracing.
Okay. So your features EVM EOF is backed off of the current frog that Nethermind is shipping?
It's not in Prague at the moment. Sorry,
Okay.
yes, it's rebased on it at the moment.
Okay. So it's off of main. Great. Dragon, how about Ref and Revum?
There's one bug found by you, basically for external delegate call, when it's pointing to the precompile, we would call precompile, and that shouldn't happen. Other than that, I think Red added Osaka hard fork, so we should be ready to go.
Okay. I think like two or three clients got hit by the EXT delegate call on a precompile. So
Yeah, it did. That was really great find.
yeah. Someone from I think was it Powell that wrote that bill up? Or was that a port over from Powell?
I did the one that mine was related to data load.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, I mean, at least this was the test you pointed to. So it was just loading unaligned data from data storage. Like some pieces are from data storage, some were outside. But maybe I misunderstood.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was ext code copy, but there's also another one where you do ext delegate call to any of the precompiles, and they're all supposed to fail because none of them are EOF. That change went in a few weeks ago. That test. Okay. So nothing is that. So that's it for ref.
Yep.
Okay. Powell, how about EVM one?
So we are in the phase of transitioning to Osaka. I mean, to moving EOF to Osaka. I think the change itself, it's not complicated. But this affects a lot of testing around it. And yeah, so this is the issue that Mario mentioned. I think we can get it. We need to update some tooling as well to be able to handle some JSON that is related to Prague and maybe Osaka as well. So that's what's like, it's ongoing work, and we still don't have all the Prague EAPs in. So I think when we test EOF in isolation, that's kind of okay. But as soon as we get to testing some interaction with other EAPs, I think we might be in trouble. So yeah, I think it would be good that other clients can also fill the tests if that's needed. And finally, going back to test a bit, I migrated all of the execution tests from the old repo to execution spec tests. I think there's one more request that is in the review, but it should be the last one. And so we can consider that there is no more any execution tests in Ethereum/tests repo that are targeting EOF. Actually, there's actually no more execution tests that targets Prague or anything above. So I think that's kind of a milestone in terms of clarity what the tests are. There are still plenty of validation tests, but they behave a bit statically, so I think they're easier to manage if we need to.
Okay, and just for the notes, that was all of Ethereum tests that was migrated over, or
Or execution tests, which are state tests. That's something that the actual execute code, not only validate. That's what I mean by execution tests. Yeah, a state test is probably a better term.
Ben, you raised your hand.
Yeah, on testing, I had a question related to the readiness matrix. I'm not sure entirely what half of it is.
Okay.
I'm worried we're missing something. So we have the yeah, the further down, the bottom half, the exported ones.
Yeah.
The-
So let's see if you open new tests. Yeah, if you can download these and put them in your basically your test directory, you need to extend your Ethereum tests again to accept a new source.
Yeah, so the archive that is called Ethereum EVM1 dash tests. I think the last one from the release. It's just a package JSON test that we generate from EVM1. That are like originally internal tests of EVM1, but we have kind of tool that can just export them to JSON. So that's what is it. If you never actually use that, I mean, they should be similar to execution spec test archive, but there might be some differences in terms of directory structure. I don't remember exactly. And there also might be some like false positives because not everything works very precisely. But if you want to test, use this as a like confirmation that everything works. In this matrix, there are different versions. So just use the last one and you can skip like the previous versions. They're still in the matrix because some clients reported that they passed these, so we keep it there. But I think it's enough to just use the version 0.13. And yeah, and if you have some like failures, but they look suspicious to you, you can just report what's wrong.
Yeah, no one's updated the matrix on this. Locally, I've run Besu, EVM1, Geth, Nethermind, and Revum off of raw EEST. And right now they're all running clean. So I don't expect any surprises here. I haven't run Aragon or Ethereum JS locally or EELS. I don't have scripts set up to run those easily. Yeah. Okay. I'll take the field for Besu. And we have Osaka in place. And we're based off of whatever main is. So wherever Besu is on the prog 3.4 process, it's there. And this is off the main line. Okay. I don't see any other clients on the call. Our compiler teams. Okay. Any other updates on clients and testing that we should go over before we go to the next section? Okay. So I probably should have put return codes in the same category as hashcode ext dev call. Because we went through that pretty well in the last meeting. And possibly the EOF create hashing. Do we have any updates on that from EVM1? From not EVM1, from Epsilon?
Just a tiny bit. I think the main issue with this idea is that yeah, you can create another init code context out of previous init code context. In other words, during init code execution, you can invoke another create, right? So it creates this nested init code context. And I think in this scenario, it's pretty unclear what is the address of the code. So we want to put the address of the code where the container is in this function that computes the final address of the created account. And it works for the basic EOF create, but if you nest these, it's getting messy because so originally I thought I would put, I don't know actually. So the number of options, what to exactly put there, but none of them seems good. So we can say that the address address of this like parent container where the init code is, even if it's nested. But or this can be the address of this init code, like the upper init code context, because this contract will be created finally, and the code will be deployed. But the deployed code will have some subcontainers possibly, and there will be different subcontainers that you actually referred to when you computed the address. So that's kind of like fake derivation that you computed something that points you to some subcontainer, but it's actually not the subcontainer that was used. It's something that will deploy later. And finally, if you consider create transaction, so this the hacky one that we introduced as a way to deploy contracts. So when you start executing this transaction, you immediately create this init code context, and if you have EOF create in this context, it would point you to the to the sender of the transaction, but it has no code. So this address has no code, but the nested create address will be somehow related to this something fakey code that never existed. And it seems to me it's kind of pretty difficult to define what to do with this field in this function. So I guess, yeah, you can put a flag. Maybe you should put you can, in this context, maybe you want to omit the address, or like put null address there, or like all F address, this number of options. And I don't see this super. Look, I guess it's not always possible to point you to the physical address where someone can look it up, the subcontainer. So maybe it's to actually indicate that by omitting the code address somehow. And so that's more or less the status when I stopped. So I think we need to handle this case somehow. And yeah, I considered number of options, but nothing is really settled. So yeah, something from omitting the address in some way, maybe actually hashing the subcontainer in this context when we cannot actually prove where it comes from. But this means the cost of computing the address will be different into these two scenarios, and that seems also not great. So I don't know. But I think that's the main issue with this idea, that in this context we need to behave differently that we would do for like regular EOF create that are coming from deployed contracts.
Okay. Frangio, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understand the issue. Is with regard to nested creates, right? Is
Yes.
it that
Right.
if you use the address of the code and the index of the subcontainer, that could refer either to the code once deployed or the init code? Is that the ambiguity?
Well, an
Yes.
EOF could have a nested EOF could have a nested EOF. They could use chain creates, like you create you deploy Uniswap, and you also deploy the factory for the swap contracts. So the EOF could have an EOF create within it.
But that would change the address of the code in the nested levels, wouldn't it?
The physical address would be where the contract is at, where the root
one that's being
topmost
created.
validated. If we do anything other than the topmost code, we're going to hash the inner codes, I think, is the concern, and we're trying to get away from that.
Sorry, have what? The inner what?
So we're trying to get some unique information about the address of the parents. So the rootmost container would have an address that we could use. And if we use the rootmost address as some path to the subcontainers, then we don't have to hash the subcontainers because you have some predictable address to create from it. However, if we don't use the rootmost container, the concern is we would have to hash each subcontainer to get a verifiable derivation of the address.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm not understanding there.
Yeah.
So
Are you gonna be
I'm gonna ask yeah, sorry.
Are you going to be at DevCon? Is this something we should do like a corner on for EOF issues or?
Yeah, that would be great. I'll be there.
Okay.
And regarding the avoiding hashes, which I understand is mainly about ZK, rollups wanting to avoid catch-up. Is there an assumption that you need to hash the init container on every EOF create, or what if it's cached? Like when the rootmost container is deployed, you can cache the hashes of all of the subcontainers. Doesn't that, reduce the overhead by just doing it once?
It could, and that's an implementation detail. The ZK systems could bring their hashes in. We still have to hash it when the opcode is called when they bring in their salts, but we would want something that is ready just to add the salts.
Yeah.
So they'd have the pre-images ready to go. You add the salt, and then you run the hash one last time. And that's assuming the ZK systems don't just rip out Kachak and use some different hashing algorithm, but everything is the same except for the hashing algorithm.
Okay. Because I tried to make the argument in the issue that I see some value in keeping the current scheme. But if it's a matter of cost, I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, like my main motivation was that it's somehow kind of awkward that you hash the subcontainer to get the address, but the subcontainer cannot ever change. So you kind of repeating hashing of like static data, and every time you use that. So this seems like something is kind of misaligned in the design here. That we're hashing something that we know that there will be produce the same hash every time, but there's actually like not obvious place how to work around it, like where to store the hash of it. I mean, if it would be different if we kind of address subcontainers by hashes, right? That would be kind of more natural way that you address it, and then but that's also like has some issues, and so that's where it comes from in my mind. But I don't think it's like super required. But I think we wanted to explore this if we can make something that replaces hashing. But it's also like difficult to describe all these like edge cases that we are finding right now in this like.
If you can write down the edge case, I
Yeah,
don't know if it's
tried.
the same one. It's the same one that is written.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think we can simplify, and I found a bit more new, something new as well. So yeah, I will rewrite that, and then I will like notify you that I think it requires a bit different description that is more readable, because I think these were my just like quick notes for myself, and maybe there's a way to improve that description in a way that it's more clear what's going on.
Yeah, because I'd like to think about it. I feel like it can be solved. I mean, and the only thing we need is just unambiguity, right?
Well,
in the lack of clashes, I mean, in the.
Yes, but I also thought that some way a proof that the address will come exactly from this code is something useful as well. maybe it's the same
Got it.
the same property, but yeah, even so one of the issues we have currently is that you can kind of fake with this nested creates. So you can refer to the index of the subcontainer, and later there will be subcontainer with this index at the given address, but it will be actually different subcontainer because it was deployed later and this, yeah. So I think this is something we also want to avoid. So you cannot fake it because that seems like a new security area that you need to think when you create a contract that can any like external actor can actually like, yeah, maybe that's more for the collision. So the collision definitely we want to avoid, so nobody can claim the address by tricking your contract to do something that will actually deploy something different, and then you will not be able to deploy what you planned to, right? That's obviously something we want to avoid. But maybe that's not very important right now. But I remember that this like create2 scheme was kind of created with this in mind, that you can, yeah, you can yeah, you can predict what the address will be, and you can also put some guarantees how the address, like what code would be used to create it. It's not like perfect because you can work around some things there, but at least that was something that I kind of keep in mind. Maybe it's not relevant anymore.
Polymorphic addresses and contracts were kind of a pain in the neck when it came to analysis. So the value of making sure that the actual code bytes go into forming the addresses, I see as very valuable. So, and I view that as a subversion of create2's intent when they're able to do polymorphic code. So,
As a side note, what had also come up in the issue was regarding including or not the call data. What's the prevailing opinion there?
including call data in the hash.
Yeah, I don't remember right now. Is it called call data or init data?
I mean the init data that goes to the create instruction. Yeah.
The input. Yeah.
The input.
I mean, I don't think it should be included or weekly. I weekly feel that way, but it seems like some of you were considering that.
I think we did briefly, and I can tell if that's good or not. I mean, I know what this can be used for, right? It's to also prove that you will use like specific arguments for this creation, right? So that's,
yeah.
But
that's easily defeated.
Yeah, you
it's
can
easily
easily
defeated by a
that.
link in a. Yeah, just keep all your config out of the class. Yeah.
It doesn't like seal all the possibilities, but maybe it's actually useful for someone who actually has something. So yeah, so it doesn't give you like full guarantees, but you can, by inspecting the code and combining this, I think you can improve situation. But maybe it's not written, but what I found is that users can do that by hashing the init code and combining this with the salt. So you can kind of create a scheme that you will be able to prove the init arguments as well. You just need to kind of code it yourself, right? So you can, before invoking EOF code, you can hash what you will pass to it and then combine it like XOR. I don't know what is the best combination of hashes. Maybe it's just a salt. So there's a way to do that, and you can always you can't really hash subcontainer because it's not readable. So yeah, I was thinking about it, but I definitely don't have like very lot of experience with actually, working with
Okay.
smart contracts on this level. So definitely we welcome some feedback on this.
Yeah. No, my intuition is that what we have now is satisfies all requirements. Maybe it needs just a little bit more work than current EVM, legacy EVM, but it's sufficient to prove the inputs.
Okay.
All right. Put a time box on this, since we're not at a resolution. So let's go ahead and move on to the next thing on the potential change list is modifying max stack height. I think the idea here was to change max stack height in a call F, jump F section to not include the number of inputs, to just be the additional stack required beyond inputs. Am I reading that right?
Yes. Yes, because what the runtime actually needs is subtraction of these two values. So it actually needs max stack height as defined today minus the number of inputs to check if the calling a function will cause a stack overflow, right? So what the runtime does, it actually reads these two values and subtracts them and then proceeds. So like to optimize the runtime a bit. And also, you can just define this, like what is exactly the numbers in the header on in this type section in a way that you just need to read one value of instead of two. That's the main thing. But it also, I think, it also removes some redundancy in the actual bits in the type header, because if you think about it, the max stack height cannot be lower than number of inputs, right? So you kind of keep these two values in two different places. I mean, the number of inputs, it's from like, I don't know if that's proper thing, but from like information theory, you just put these values in actually two slots, because max stack height cannot ever go below this value. So yeah, so like if you consider what the ranges are of the possible values in the header, there's also like kind of redundancy. So you can argue that that's like better encoding as well. And that's it.
From a fuzzy perspective, that means that those two values aren't related. So they can change independently, which is, I guess, proves the information theory point.
Yeah, I bet, yes, as well. So but I wouldn't put it so like, yeah, so it's kind of minor thing, but I think it's like the change is relatively simple. I'm not sure about how much testing effort that needs to like change this in the test. That might be difficult. If you have some like static test or like example test, you will need to go in every such place and like change these numbers.
I think every place we specify max stack height, we would have to change it. It would break half the tests.
Yeah.
But it might be worth the effort, you know.
I think it's worth. If we have time, I would do it. If we would ship like EOF like next month, that's fine not to do it. But if we have find a like time slot that we can improve that, I think it's worth to do it. It's minor improvement, but yeah, it's kind of quality of life thing.
Will we rename the field?
I think the issue. I remember someone proposed a name for it.
Max stack increase.
Yeah, something. So there was a name for it.
Yeah. I
Because
think back at the time we liked it.
Because if we change the name, it makes it easier to go through the code and update it. Mario?
Yeah, so when you say that it's gonna take a lot of rewriting and testing, do you mean in the unit tests of the clients or do you mean in East?
Both.
Both. Okay. Because I think in East there are a lot of instances where we automatically calculate this value. So in those cases, I think it's gonna be pretty easy just to take the input, just subtract, and then just go ahead and then change it. I don't know how easy it's gonna be in the unit tests for the clients.
Yeah, it's just an afternoon running tests until they stop breaking. I've done it before.
Yeah, it's not like the end of the world, I think. It's just it's like slightly painful piece of this work that you need to yeah, but it's like kind of mechanical, but it's not like you can always find some issues. Even like today, I think. Not today, but like in the recent weeks, we Hugo came and like found some issues in one examples that were kind of had incorrect like binary representation, and yeah, it's sometimes it remains unnoticed until you actually look at it. For example, because you either don't execute these, or like the error is somewhere else, and then like before you reach this point, and then it's kind of has another error later. There's always something like that happens, but I think we've been through this already, so we more or less know how much work it is.
But if we had to like Q3, this is worth doing.
Yeah, how I was thinking about it is that, at least for my side, the like first step is to get EOF in Osaka and update tests and update tooling and make sure like everything works according to the current spec. So
Okay.
yeah, and then we can. I would pack all of these proposed changes into like single shipment. So
Right.
let's say like DevNet 0 is without it, DevNet 1 is with the basket of changes, and then we ship it once because they are minor changes, I think.
Okay. All right. And I think the next one falls in this bucket. Align EOF create stack to align with args column. Basically, we're reordering stack arguments.
Yes, the same story. I think that's even easier because probably not so many tests. It's not like every test has this instruction, right? So
I think it's easier to update in the clients as well. Sounds like it's just swap two lines for EVM one, for example.
Yeah. Well, each client is different because like I know gets got littered all over their code assumptions about certain stack heights when it comes to their calls and their creates. So if we could align those, it would be great for them. As far as the depth, but as far as ext call versus call, we're already breaking some of the stack height variations. So we'll see. But as far as tooling, to have them, just to look at the docs and have them in the same order would be huge. Call. Any other comments on it?
I would say beyond tooling, it's also useful for developers who are maybe manually debugging, to just reuse their existing knowledge and not having to like swap the elements in their mind.
Because also this was brought up by someone on EFMAG. A bit different context, but the gist that the order of the arguments is weird as the same.
Okay. I think the last change is even easier than all of these. Rename return contract to return code. Okay. Any other? So I think that was the last of the quality of life list that
Quick
was
one.
posted. Yeah.
So you mentioned ext code at the very beginning. I don't want to bring it up just to mention that I created an issue in this in the EOF repo. I just invite people to read it for when we discuss this. And the other one was ext data copy. I imagine this is also for later, but I just want to get a feel for what the appetite is for that one.
Yeah, those have been mentioned before. And I think those were mostly cut due to complexity arguments. So adding it is I think open discussion. Yeah, I'll mention in the one of the strongest arguments is why can't we just use SDOR2? So that's going to be where a lot of the arguments can come from. But I think that's already mentioned in the bug report. If not, I'll add it.
So my imagined solution for this X data was that you can write a contract that just returns the data. And I planned, yeah, but I forgot. I planned to actually write it and see how many instructions it is. So I'll definitely try to do this as an example, how you can get more or less the same behavior, but maybe, yeah, that's not enough. I don't know.
So the thought that crossed my mind the other night is what if we, using Nick's gadget, created a standard set of all the opcodes of contracts that just do the opcode and return. They pull the values off of the args, they do the opcode and they return, and we just figure out, a standard set of addresses to put them at using Nick's public signature gadget. So I don't know.
So yeah, so the only difference is, which kind of starts to bother me, is that the data will come to different memory. It will be in the return data buffer, not the memory. So if you need it in memory later, I will need to copy it. So it's another copy. So yeah, I'm kind of feeling that return data as a separate memory is kind of was the bad idea. But
So I'm not sure I understand, why is SSTOR2 seen as an alternative? Because in my mind, so the point of ext data copy would be I have an address for a contract and I know that it has a certain piece of data that I want. And so I want to use this to fetch it.
So
where does SSTOR2 fit?
one of the things STOR2 fits in, right now without ext data, nobody can copy the data of a contract without the contract allowing it to be read. And that even goes for legacy code too. So if a contract from its internal data wants to return its data, it has to opt in and create an interface to send it. So by not having ext data copy, we allow contracts to have a privacy provision. Now, easily defeatable, you go outside the EVM, go to your block explorer, read the data in there, you can get it. But within the EVM, you can't go into other contracts. So there is a bit of a data privacy argument and an encapsulation argument there. And contracts that want to allow people to access their data can use the SSSTOR2 interfaces to allow their contract to be done. So the choice about ownership of data now belongs to the contract. But again, that's modulo leaving the EVM, using a block explorer, reading the data, and coming back to it, which is also presuming that these blockchains are fully public and fully auditable on the outside. Ethereum mainnet's not going to be a situation where we're never going to make the blockchain fully public. So that's that's not something that we're too concerned about for mainnet use. Keeping the full privacy. But that is one feature that I see
Yeah.
right now that not having it keeps.
So SSTOR2, it's we're just talking about like the interface, so it's like the read function.
Right.
Oh, okay. Because for me, SSTOR2 is more about even writing to. It's just kind of a pattern to use legacy contracts as data contracts. But anyway, the point is, can we? Yeah. So okay, now the question for me would be, is that equivalent? Probably, yeah. I'll think about that.
So yeah, it's not equivalent because when we require them to opt into sharing their data, then there's no equivalent to, it's the default secret. And there's not even opt-in secrecy when we have ext data copy. But secrecy is probably a bad word because again, you use the block explorer and just read it publicly.
Yeah, sorry, I meant, is it equivalently good for the use cases that I've seen? That's what I wanted to think about.
Something to think ahead about this is the behavior when X data copy is the target is a legacy contract or a 7702 account, and also will it be allowed in legacy contracts? So I guess a proposition would need to come with those questions answered.
I don't know if fault's necessarily a good solution because that's, yeah.
And also, do we have X data load for good measure?
Do we have ext code load right now though? We don't. It all goes to memory, right?
Ext code load? No.
Okay.
So that would be one argument for not having.
It's already expensive. Why make it cheaper? Okay. Anything else we should put on the wish list to think about over DevCon?
Well, the other one that's been on my mind is the delegate call to legacy thing. I've kind of already made, so it's kind of tied to the ext code discussion, right? I think if we get ext code hash so that a contract can predict whether the delegate call will fail, that's pretty good. That said, to me, it would still be just a little bit more ideal to get delegate call, like unrestricted delegate call. I understand the problem of self-destruct, and I agree. The thing that I wonder is, what about something where if you trigger self-destruct in the context of an EOF contract, it doesn't do anything, or rather it behaves like the nerfed self-destruct that we have in with those exceptions. I don't know if you've already considered this. I understand that it adds some complexities, like a different kind of static call context that the clients would need to handle. So it's not ideal, but it would be something that I, might be interesting to consider.
Okay. But I think the first one where safety detecting a legacy is kind of a needed feature. Yeah.
I mean, we usually, when we discuss it, we boil down to saying that this is rather easily workaroundable by having, because the problems with the legacy, with the update of the proxy target to legacy, right? That it would be solvable on the smart contract layer, that the proxy before, it would revert if it could detect that it's not able to delegate call the new target and revert in that if detected. So there could be this fuse mechanism. So this is different from the ext code size and ext code size case, that this actually is workaroundable, right?
Right. So you're saying that there is a way to detect the future, the potential for failure, without the need for ext code, right?
Yes. I mean, it would be just like a delegate call to the new target.
Yeah, that's right. That seems to generally work.
So I mean, the issue is like, I mean, it is there, but it is it's less severe because it can be worked around on the different layer.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we got about 3 minutes left. I'm gonna, once I get they say they're gonna have discussion corner, so I think we should probably try and set up a time to do a discussion. I'll coordinate on the Discord, at least to get people together, and have a general open community, time to gather just for EOF without an agenda, just to talk about EOS. So I'll try and get that corner set up at some point when I see the schedules. If anyone has any strong opinions as to what day and time it should be, please post those in the Discord or send them to me. Yeah, so it's getting time to do coordination for DevCon. So maybe the next meeting's going to be a DevCon meetup. So that's probably what we should aim for. Cool. I'd like to thank everyone for calling in. Any last comments before we close? All right. Hope everyone has safe travels to DevCon.